We were very looking forward for that summer season. We had already started Argentina, so we were actually just bought Norwegian in Argentina at the time, which we thought it was a good move to be in Aeroparque. And that's our life. We have 17 Airbus A320s, three, Boeing 737s in Argentina as well. And suddenly, as we all know, the world stopped. So one day to the next, 95% of our sales are down. And I just called the CFO and said, don't pay anybody. We just pay salaries and nothing else. We'll figure it out. And it was, I think, the start of the second phase of Jetsmart. The present was what I would call the startup phase from 0 to 17. And then by then we had already signed 80 aircraft. So we had a large order book. And we have a game plan to how to deploy the aircraft, and everything changed. And that time the key question was, until when do we stay the same? And it was amazing because we always had like projections of what would happen. And we had like the optimistic, the realistic, and the pessimistic. And it always was worse than the pessimistic. So it's incredible. We kept those 17 aircraft all the way through July 2022. So it was really 2 years and a half that was literally, taken away from our growth plans. But I think we saw opportunity in the pandemic as well. We knew that the market was going to change. We thought the recovery is going to be very asymmetrical, so not all markets going to recover at the same pace. We thought domestic was going to be recovering sooner than international because we all know the borders were quite difficult. The domestic was easier. So at the end of the pandemic, we thought, okay, maybe now's the time to think about another domestic operation rather than the original plan was always let's build one AOC, bring it to scale, grow domestic, grow international, and then move to the next, and to the next, and to the next. But the pandemic changed that completely, right? And it was 2020 actually, about maybe October that we said, Peru is a market we want to be. It was super congested. That's going to change. And we went to certify the airline during the pandemic. So, great work from the team, great work from the Peruvian DJAC to help us out through that. And our original plan was to launch in June 2021. And that'll be in June 2022. But I think was the right choice. And then became the next phase, which we are now, which is, again, going on high-speed growth.
Okay, and that high-speed growth is right here in Colombia. You became a domestic operator about this time last week, I think. You were initially launching with 8 routes. Why did you decide on Colombia as the next phase of your expansion?
Well, as I said before, I think the pandemic opened opportunities we never thought were going to be. I was concerned about moving. We knew always we wanted to be in Peru, we wanted to be in Colombia, but the reality of the matter was those operations were saturated at the airport, saturated on pilots. It was difficult to get in, and the pandemic, has been hard for all of us, but it's amazing to realize that there are 12 airlines less in the region than there were before COVID-19. So Peru became a market from 7 to 2, Argentina became a market from 7 to 3, and we entered Peru, and then Colombia was always in the map. I thought it was going to be, later in the game, but we always believed in the market. We always knew we want to be here. Colombia for us is a tremendous opportunity for growth. Domestic Colombia, maybe some of you guys know, but it's larger than Peru, Colombia, Peru, Chile, and Argentina together. So it's for us a big opportunity. And we started the process of certification end of 2022, not knowing what was going to change, just knowing something's probably going to change. And it happened, as you'll know, that two airlines, ceased operations last year, that opened the window. And that's why David decided this is the time to go. Maybe it was not like in the original game plans, but this opportunity doesn't happen, haven't seen it happen in, 20 years. So we are very happy that we started operations in Colombia last week.
And that opportunity, as you said, we saw Viva and we saw Ultra go about this time last year. I know there was talks you were originally interested in both. Why did you choose not to pursue an acquisition and to choose to start afresh with your own AOC?
Well, the strategic decision on our view was we will be in Colombia. Now, what's the path to get there? And in fact, we tried to get a transaction made with Viva, but by the time we were working on that, it was clear to us that the shareholders didn't want to proceed with that because it was already acquired by another airline, and there was no willingness to do the transaction. In the case of Winter, it was just a matter of by the time we actually got the terms to an LOI, the conditions precedents were not there, so we had to cancel the deal. Good thing is that we also had picked on the AOC process, and at the end of the day, it took a little longer, but it's 100% with our fleet, 100% with our SOPs and everything. So I think it's going to be long-term beneficial, even if it's a few months after.
It is so competitive, though, isn't it? Though, as you said, Viva and Ultra have gone, but that capacity was quickly replaced. So we saw LATAM, we saw Avianca come in. I think we've done a story today saying the domestic market in Colombia this week is record levels for capacity. That's thanks to obviously you entering the market. And we've seen during the pandemic that LATAM and Avianca, they've significantly lowered their cost base. How are you going to compete with that level of competition in this market?
Look, when we went through the pandemic, we kept all of our team, all our management team. We did some right sizing on crews, and the key was we were an airline just focused on one thing, growth, and then we switched those 2 years to do stuff that we didn't have time to do, right? So the goal was we will go out of the pandemic stronger, faster, more agile, lower cost base, because I knew, Bianca and Latam were going to Chapter 11, which allows them to restructure the debt, but also to reduce costs. So we were expecting a post-pandemic airline market, which was more concentrated. The consolidation did happen, probably will continue happening. My sense, it hasn't ended yet. But it's going to be very competitive on cost. So we also went out and renegotiated all of our contracts. We bought aircraft. We're probably the few airlines in the world that bought aircraft during the pandemic. So in 2021, along with the other Indigo Partners portfolio airlines, we bought 250 aircraft. So the conditions we got on many of the components and the aircraft and the deals allowed us to come out of the pandemic with a lower cost base than we had pre-pandemic. And I think that's key for us, because at the end of the day, we want to stimulate the market. The model is about, think about this, South America has about 450 million people. In 2019, there were 220 million trips. So Peter Serra from Ayala was showing us, we're 0.65, 0.5. South America is less than 0.5 trips per capita. So we just need a fraction of that to fill up our 100 aircraft order to increase. So our focus is really to go after that market. And that market is very price sensitive. So the cost base is the key thing. I don't focus on market share. My team can sell and I don't care. I think it's a dangerous game in that niche. I'm looking at market share. We look at market stimulation. How do we bring more people to the plane? Operate safely, efficiently. It's about cost. It's about pricing. And so I'm less concerned about that. I think Colombia has great potential, not only domestic but international as well. So we're confident that our model, based on that target group, will work.
Okay, so as long as you keep your costs as low as they can be, which it sounds like you have been doing, you're confident of success in this market. Now, I know you're launching with 8 domestic routes, and you also have some international routes into Colombia from Lima and Santiago. What's the network plan then for your Colombian units? Do you see yourself adding more domestic routes? Do you see yourself adding more international routes as well, maybe to countries that you don't already serve? Because obviously you can access different markets. I'm thinking the US, for example, from Colombia. Is that something that you're considering at this stage?
Look, I think the market has been quite interesting to see what's happened since the pandemic. I mean, we saw in the morning domestic markets in the region were like 3% already above 2019. International is still like 10% below. But the interesting thing is that the international is very, very different. There are countries that are like 30% below the pandemic and countries that are 10% above the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of opportunities still this year, 2024, 2025, on international routes. We like to also explore new things. So as you guys may know, we started operations in Colombia last week. We're going to have a base operations in El Dorado Airport. We also have a base operations in León, in Antioquia, in Medellin. So that's something we like to continue doing, right? So connecting dots within cities that are not necessarily served or underserved. We fly, for example, Lima to Cúcuta, which is a city in Colombia, or Cali to Antofagasta in the north of Chile. So I think there's many opportunities for Jetsmart and for all the airlines. What Peter spoke at noon is key in my view, which is the taxes. The airports, if you think if Spain can have 4.5 passengers trips per capita a year, and we have half, I think the biggest obstacle for this to change is taxation.
What needs to change though? Because as I said to Peter earlier, we seem to have this discussion at every routes event, every aviation event that you go to. People in the industry knows that it needs to change, but how do you convince the governments that the value of aviation?
I think, quite humbly, I think Jetsmart can play a factor in that, or the ULCC model. It's in a broader perspective, because the aviation grew from a high fare environment, and therefore the taxes is probably a small percentage, 10%, 15% of your total out of pocket. But today we sell tickets that the out of pocket is 30% fare, 70% taxes, right? I'll give you two examples that I found very fascinating. One is Brazil. So Brazil has indeed, the largest country in the region, has reduced the airport fee substantially. It's a mindset change that we don't want revenue. The government wants revenue. The airport concessionaires want revenue, right? At the end, it's being multiplied by Q, and the thing is, okay, maybe we should increase the Q. But you need to have airlines to do that. Airlines that have low costs, low fares, that want to grow. It's a complete change in the mindset, and the Brazilians have done. Chile has done very good inroads. Since our start in 2017, we've shown the government, look, the market has grown back in those days 28% in 2 years, and it has grown 7% in the previous 7 years. So it was quite dramatic, right? And they did reduce the fees by 35%. So there are precedents. Cartagena in Colombia has done the same. So there's a few examples that make me think that it's a process. And I think we are now in a very critical part of history of aviation in South America. This is the time to do this. I see change happening, for example, in Argentina. I see change in government policy stating that tourism is a key factor for development, in the case of Colombia, for example. So I think we need to use this momentum to finally get rid of these roadblocks, right? One of them being that, and another one being, free open skies, effective open skies, right? So, but this one, David, is fascinating. I think if we can start doing more examples like Brazil, like Chile, like Cartagena, we'll be surprised of how many people. Think about that. There's around 100 million people who travel, maximum in the region. There's 350 million that don't. And you had to pay $1,000, they couldn't afford it. But we start selling tickets at $10. So I think it's possible. But like you said, it's a process, and we need to continue it.
Okay. Let's talk then about Argentina, which you just mentioned then. We are seeing change.
Why did I say that? Yes.
we are seeing change in Argentina. As you mentioned, you bought Norwegian Air Argentina just before the pandemic. There was the whole issue with El Palomar Airport.
Yes.
But now we seem to be in a position where we've got a new government that is very open to expanding the aviation industry and to forging new connections with other countries. What's your view on how the market's developing there? Do you see potential for Jetsmart to further increase its footprint in Argentina because of that?
Ask me again in 6 months. Look, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in Argentina. Pablo is smiling there, but we've had our fair share of changes. We started in Panama, then was shut down, then we put in local parties. So in fact, we were in a database for a few months. On the other hand, every time we put more capacity, we've seen yields and fares go up at the same pace or higher than inflation. And I think we're now, again, in a very historical moment in the aviation industry in Argentina. Clearly there's change. I guess we will wonder whether all the pleasant delay initiatives will come to pass or not, and there's a big question about whether there's a political or not influence and social support to actually implement it. But we have seen change ourselves in the past 3 months that we have not seen in the previous 4 years. So it's encouraging. It's quite encouraging to see that, soon enough, we'll be operating a route that we've been wanting to operate since day one, which is flying out of Argentina. It's very exciting also to see that Brazil and Argentina are signing, an agreement for open skies. There's interest with Peru. So I do think there is an opportunity in Argentina for sure. To what size, to what magnitude, will be in a position to take advantage of the opportunity? My answer is yes. If we need to move, we can. We became very agile through the pandemic. We have a big order book. We just recently got our number 35, which probably still, in terms of airlines, still a relatively small airline, but it's starting to give us some scale, and we have another 80 aircraft in order. So I think if all those changes materialize in reality, and they do come, and a structural change in the aviation code, which is under review, and the way that the country's policy regarding Aerolíneas Argentinas is, we might be talking about in the second part of this year. So a completely different scenario for us in Argentina.
And you'd have the assets to move around quickly if that was the case. You'd be able to
Exactly that. I think we can definitely see the opportunity if it comes to pass. So again, for now, we're just watching very carefully everything that's going on, and I try to be cautiously optimistic. But so far, it's looking in the right direction.
Okay, it's good to hear. At the start, you mentioned about the ambition was to move from one AOC to the next. You've just done Colombia. Where is next? I mean, it's been mentioned Brazil in the past is a potential market for you. There's no ULCC competition there. It's a huge market. We heard from Peter about the propensity to travel is very low in Brazil at the minute. Is that a market you're considering? The president is keen to get ULCCs in there. Do you foresee Jetsmart ever having a subsidiary based there?
Look, I think for us now, it's really about focusing on those 4 markets. We can grow from 35 to 100 aircraft easily with what we have. So that's it. Down the road, Brazil, yes, of course. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. It's not only a big market, but also a market that has a lot of opportunity. What was spoken in the morning, I fully support. We talked about taxation. In the case of Brazil, it's also related to the fuel, the claims. I mean, listen to this, 90% of all the customer claims in the world, the global claims, and the total global claims, 90% of them is. So it's clearly something that needs to be addressed. Keeping the customer the ability to decide what's included or not in the fares, it's also critical. I mean, that has been discussed in Congress many times. But we'll have to wait. I think we have our hands full for now.
Okay, so get Colombia up and running first, and then start thinking about the next
We need to
one.
scale up Peru, we need to scale up Chile, and again, Argentina, we'll see. It's fascinating what could happen in Argentina.
Moving on then, obviously we're at a redevelopment conference to talk a little bit more about your network and how that's evolved. I think at the minute you're operating about 80 or so routes across your 4 AOCs, and about 70% of that capacity is on domestic Are you going to keep that balance going forward? Do you see yourself adding more international routes now, international capacity as you grow?
We are adding more international capacity. Yes, absolutely. The mix has been changing, and we're more international than we were before. As I mentioned before, the market has recovered quicker on domestic, so there's more opportunity international. So now we are probably shifting more towards a 40-60 mix between international and domestic. But that will change. I mean, I've been in the industry long enough to know how things change. They change as it does very quickly. And there's cycles. I mean, 2 years from now, I'll be saying, oh, now the domestic are great and the international are not good. So the key thing from my learning in the pandemic is about becoming very nimble, very agile, react very quickly. And we did through the pandemic. We've been doing lately as well, shifting aircraft, shifting routes. That's going to be the key at the end, I believe, because the market will continue to change, and the winner is going to be who gets there, well, that's quicker, rather than who has a bigger size.
And do you see yourself adding more international routes from secondary cities? I think at the minute, Santiago, Lima are the focus for your Chilean crew. But do you see the potential there for new connections from secondary cities?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely secondary cities is a focus we're looking at, and Green will continue to grow in the future. There's a lot of interest from airports that are here in this convention and cities to bring connectivity. Everybody acknowledges now the value of tourism, the value of connectivity, the economic impact it has. So we're getting a lot of support from those cities, and I think we actually fly. In Chile, for example, we fly more routes that do not touch Santiago than the ones that go outside. So it's really a network that has sort of changed the way that the network has been built in the past. So I was surprised when I went to Chile, and I did myself on buses, because we don't look at the aviation market, we look at the transportation market. So the buses, 24 hours to get to a city, to connect a city in the north to a city in the north can be 6 hours, 7 hours. Then you go by plane, you gotta fly on top of the city that you are actually going to, go all the way down south and then going back where you're going. So we've changed that. And we intend to continue changing that.
Do you need regulation though to change for you to continue changing that? I mean, do you have the bilaterals in place for you to enhance that inter-regional connectivity as you want to?
I think there's definitely space that we need to improve, for sure. So like I said before, the biggest obstacle to see a South America aviation develop as in Europe, again, number one would be taxation, airport fees. But the second one would be, liberalization. Absolutely. I mean, we still have a lot of restricted bilaterals. We're having a hard time, for example, to expand our routes from Chile to Peru, for instance. We suffered those many times from Argentina. So, absolutely. I mean, we need to do that. We need to make sure also that we see a modern aviation in sense, for example, of foreign pilots. So we still have to have, Colombian pilots in Peru and Colombian pilots in Colombia, Peruvians in Peru, and so I think that's a thing of the past. Why would we have to do that?
And you still have to set up separate AOCs, obviously. You had to do that in Colombia. But
it'd be ideal if we only have one AOC. I mean, we are one airline at the end. That's the way we see it. One Jetsmart, one airline, one team, and we manage many of the functions of an airline centrally in the simplest manner possible. But you're right, we still have to have separate agencies.
Okay. Moving on then, obviously it's a network planning event and your team are probably, I don't know if they're in the room, but I'm sure they're back-to-back meetings with airport partners that want a Jetsmart route. As you said, you've got 80 aircraft on the way, 35 at the minute. What is it you need to hear from potential airport partners, from destinations? How can they secure a route from Jetsmart?
Look, the Jetsmart model, I think it's about, again, efficiency. So there's a lot of efficiency in the system that we haven't captured yet. So I want to see efficiency. I want to see cost. The whole model at the end of the day is about acknowledging that a narrow body aircraft in a 2 to 3 hour flight, it doesn't really matter. It matters that you depart and arrive on time, you got your bags, it's easy, reliable, safe, and you pay just a few bucks. Every cost we need to take into the airline is pricing going to the consumer. That means less passengers. So I want to see efficiency translated in the ways that are possible. Some contracts in the region, the concession contracts, are very limiting for the airport concessionaire as well. So most of them do not acknowledge volume, which is something we should consider. You go to Europe and you get a deal where you have 100 new flights or 1,000 flights. It's different. So it's got to be motivated to the airline to fly more rather than the opposite. I think the worst therefore is inefficient. And in the region, we gotta be realistic. You know, there's infrastructure constraints. Right? So taxi in, taxi out, moving the aircraft, having a platform, that's a lot of money that we leave on the table. Emissions, much higher emissions. We are in an agenda, of course, that we all share to improve the impact on climate change. So I think that is a win-win, big win-win, David, that we don't speak much about, and we should.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on then to talk a bit more in detail about your fleet. You said that there's the 80 aircraft that are on order. Can you just run through a timeline of when you expect to get those, what aircraft you have coming into the fleet, and where you potentially see stationing some of those aircraft?
No. No, I will not tell you that. But I would say that, you know, we have this goal from day one to have 100 aircraft, 100 million passengers, and I think we're going to get it in 2028. Where we're going to be basing those is going to depend a lot on where is more profitable, where do we see a strategic opportunity to take position. Like I said before, now I feel comfortable having those 4 AOCs. Now it's a lot, you know, more scale. So my guess is that the next 2 to 3 years is going to be building up those 3 AOCs, those 4 AOCs.
And how does it work with Indigo? Obviously, as you said, they've got a huge aircraft order during the pandemic. I imagine all the airlines within the, you know, who are backed by Indigo are fighting it out to secure aircraft. How do you go about making sure that you've got enough coming in to match with your growth ambitions?
So I think being part of the Indigo Partners portfolio has been tremendously advantageous for us. We were in 2017. We placed an order. We have a durable aircraft, so a small airline cannot, you know, by any means, be part of the largest aircraft order in Airbus history. Right? So we go there with 150 aircraft. So the terms and conditions we got were from a big airline, and we were a small airline. So I think it's been instrumental in the growth, not only because of the financial resources and capital and the networking, and then recently, you know, the incorporation of American Airlines as a partner in the company. I'm very happy about that as well.
Okay, let's talk about that partnership now, because we've been talking probably for about 30 minutes and we haven't yet mentioned American, which I think is a huge deal for you guys, because I mean I think it's one of the first, or if not the first, a legacy carrier partnering with a ULCC. How did that come about first and foremost, and what has the reaction been like from passengers towards that?
Look, I think it was a great decision. We're very happy with the partnership. American, as you guys probably know, has been a tremendous player in the region for many, many years. A very known brand, the number one, you know, frequent flyer program in the Americas, and I think in the world, usually advantage. So we saw tremendous potential from the revenue perspective and the customer proposition perspective. Americans saw tremendous potential because we closed the deal and we're still, you know, flying like 20 aircraft. They recognize potential that Jetsmart can provide the distribution they need. All the domestic markets within the various countries in South America. So I like that because it was an investment in the future that really give us a tremendous endorsement in front of all of our stakeholders. So far, we've implemented the culture in Peru and in Chile. We'll implement this year in Argentina and in Colombia as well. We will be also pioneering to become an advantage miles program in Jetsmart, so customers will be able to accrue and redeem advantage miles. But the thing for a certain segment is going to be pretty valuable. So customer response has been very positive. I think what I'm very proud of this is the way we have done it. Because the key thing was we will not stop to do this. You know, there hasn't been done in the world. It cannot be done. I'm thinking there's 55% of passengers travel in the world, LCC, and 45% legacy. And those gigantic networks are not connected. Think about it, it's massive. A massive amount of assets, of resources, of connectivity that is not linked. Why? Because the systems we built historically did not allow it. Or because us, the ULCCs, don't want it, because they're expensive. But we have what we call in general mindset, and it's okay, why don't we just do it? Let's find a way to do it. We spent a year and a half, and it helps that American Airlines is a shareholder because now they're very invested in the project, and they make tremendous inroads and changes in the way they do things to adapt to us and us to develop IT solutions. So now we are, in fact, connecting those two networks, and it has not impacted our cost structure at all. So I think that's the one thing that I found. So I'm hopeful that it's a very success story, and maybe that's going to be an example for other airlines around the world.
Okay, fantastic. And do you see the potential for any other partnerships to develop? I know there's no network commonality with any Indigo carriers at the minute. Frontier doesn't fly to any countries that you currently operate in. But is there any potential for either coaches or joint ventures going forward, looking in maybe 5 years' time?
Look, I wouldn't say no because you never know, but no plans for now. I mean, for me, it's very simple. It's keep it simple. We need to keep Jetsmart simple, low cost, super efficient. As long as we keep that, I'm always open to new things.
We have just under 5 minutes left. You've been listening to me ask the questions for the past half an hour or so. I just want to open it out to the room just to see if we have any questions from the floor. So if you just want to raise your hand, there is someone, I think, with a microphone that can get it over to you now. So if you just want to say your name, where you're from, and then ask a question. And if we can just keep it at one question, please, because we are rapidly running out of time. I think there's another panel about to come on stage in a minute. So here we go.
Is that you? Thank you.
Hi, it's Marcus from
Okay.
No.
Try again, I think, is the message.
Hello. So I will try with my question. Marcus from DC. What's your view about South and South America?
So sorry. Thank you.
Hi, Swan. I'm Marcus from Airports. So what's your view about South and South America and the expectation for using it by Jetsmart?
The what, sorry?
South.
So, look, we are working hard with the Chilean government on a SAP roundtable, probably private. I'm really hopeful that we can push this. It's definitely the one solution we have that we don't have. So Indigo Partners and the other airlines have invested in some ventures in California. We need to develop something similar here. Brazil is probably the one that is making the best progress so far. I think we're a long way from having it, but we need to keep pushing.
Aaron Karp with ATW. You're supposed to be the launch customer in Latin America for the XLR. Are you looking forward to that? And when do they expect to arrive? And what kind of network opportunities does that aircraft give you?
Look, we looked at XLR early on. I think we're the second or third airline to board the aircraft. We do see potential in it. We saw it because, of course, we can fly south to north, in essence, right? So South America to either Central North America, the Caribbean, very inspirational destinations. lower cost. So I do see potential in the aircraft. It might be coming in, as we all know, later than we thought. So it's going to probably end of 2026. Maybe. We'll see. But yes, we have 14 aircraft on water. I'm looking forward to see what we can do. I think there's plenty of opportunity.
We've got a question down at the front.
I used to say down the south, Argentina and Chile, that's the aircraft that takes Miami para todos.
Right.
It's going to be, everybody wants to go to Miami, but it's expensive, so hopefully we can make it cheap.
Greetings, Estuardo. This is Sebastián Acevedo from Talma, Colombia, and welcome to Bogota also. You were talking about looking and seeking for efficiency. What are like efficiencies or opportunities that you could see in your allies, for example, like your suppliers?
Look, that's a great question. I think that's the way that I like to see things moving forward. And thank you for the question. I think Talma's a great operator. And I think it's about sitting down and looking for win-win solutions. I don't think it's about you have to reduce the cost and you got to lower the immediate price and the profit cuts in the middle. It's about how about we do things in a different way. Right? How do we come up with solutions that are much better? Aeropuerto El Dorado, I think, is one of the most examples that we can have. The better use of not only on the ground, but also on the air. The better use of the runways. I mean, I was quite happy and hopeful when the study came out that by those 3 days program, we could take the airport 45% increased operations and hopefully get out of this slot restriction. So I think that's a good example of all of us working together to make the ecosystem more efficient.
Okay, thank you. We've got time for one more question down here at the front.
Yes, from Iceland. Two questions in one. I mean, the region and your operation model is really price sensitive, right? So there are 2 things that are being complicated in the near future and in the long term. First one is how is a low fare sustainable in a complex, economic context as complex as Colombia and Argentina, inflation. And the other thing is expanding on SAF or any other sustainability initiative. How are you going to translate to the passenger the increased cost that you have to implement for those initiatives to recruit?
Yeah, no, I think you're proud of the reality of the matter is that our model is about having a much lower cost structure than anybody else. We like to translate it into pricing. But I also see a lot of passengers that are corporations, business, traveling with us. I mean, think about it. The 90% of the market flies in economy in this region. It's only 10% flies business. There's no difference really. We fly on time, reliable. We've won the SkyTrax Award 2 years in a row. So we are getting a lot of business passengers saying, why should I pay more? When we got the Advantage Miles program, on top of that, you're going to be able to accrue miles. So I think we're evolving in a certain way, in a manner that we really didn't expect. But it's definitely welcome because it's more passengers and it's higher yields. But we are actually looking at that as a phenomenon of just keeping it simple, keep it consistent, and customers realizing that at the end of the day, value is great. And then sustainability, I would say that we're working really hard on this, not only on the environmental front, technology. To your question, how do we make the ecosystem more efficient? But we fly our aircraft from Airbus facilities using biofuel. All of our aircraft come in from Europe with SAF. The engines are there. I think it's a government initiative to create a framework of incentives so capital comes into the region to develop and invest facilities and distribution capabilities to give us the SAF. And the airlines can play a role, but it's not the airline role, in my view, to develop sustainable aviation fuel in our countries. And the worst part of it is we can, as a region. It could be not only a source of a solution for climate change, it could be a source of economic development, for the region and become a supplier of SAF in the world. It could be big.
Okay, thanks for the question. So just to close, just one more question from me, two parts. As the CEO of
You said that there were no two parts, just one.
as the CEO of a rapidly growing airline, what is the thing that keeps you awake at night? What's the biggest challenge you're facing? But also conversely, what most excites you about this job and the region?
Okay, look, I think the most important thing I've learned in these years is you gotta have a great team. We have a small team, we have to keep it simple, but we're very thoughtful about bringing always the best talent we can and have a great atmosphere. And that excites me a lot. Working with people that I work, it's great. Making a difference, I think inspires all of us in Jetsmart to open a new route and see people. And we departed on Thursday from Puente Aéreo, and it was exciting to have a few customers on our first flight in Colombia that had never been in an aircraft. We had the opportunity of one passenger that had never left Bogota. And she was 42 years old. And she boarded the plane and she flew to Medellin. I mean, that is just everything else, all the inspiration we need.
Okay, fantastic. Well, it's been great to hear about Jetsmart's growth story, where you've been and where you're going. We look forward to seeing where you go in the future, what AOCs you open, and obviously wish you the best of luck in hitting that 100 million passenger milestone by 2028. So, you just show your appreciation for Estuardo.
No, thank you.